All right, I think we can kick it off. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our first webinar, live webinar for MTI and BTI for 2025. So welcome to, welcome to the beginning of our virtual programming this year. And to start the year, we're going to start with a really fun webinar on your 1-minute videos. So we have a really fun and interesting webinar for today. And to kick it off, I'm going to
I'll go to Los Angeles
present.
then come
Oh,
back. I
can
won't go
someone?
to.
Okay, let's try to team if you could mute everyone else. Thank you. All right, and to kick it off, I'm going to introduce Sam Black. Sam, hi. Sam heads our marketing at MedTech Innovator, and she's going to kick us off with the webinar. Go ahead, Sam.
Awesome, Jim, if you don't mind. Awesome, thanks. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you guys. We have an awesome webinar for you today. Hopefully, you're going to learn a lot. We have tons of experts here, a lot of perspectives that you'll hear. Excited to introduce you to the 1-minute video competition. So we'll hear from a couple past winners. We'll also hear from professionals who can hopefully give you some perspective and ideas for how to create your own video. So the structure of this is I have the fun part of going through the logistics and all that fun stuff. But after that, you'll hear from a couple of panels. We have the past winner panels, and then we have a panel conversation with Max and Neil, who actually produce videos. Um, and then after that, we'll have some breakout rooms for about the last 30 minutes. So to kick us off, Jim, if you want to advance, please. So I'm just going to introduce the competition generally and walk you through some of the logistics, some of the stuff that you'll need to know to get started outside of the creative process. One more, Jim, please. Okay, so you might be wondering, what is this best video competition? So basically, it's a pitch video. It is not a product marketing video. It is not a testimonial video. It's really what we want is for you to tell your story. So some of the things that we'd like you to cover is like, what's the need? What's the market opportunity? Talk about your solution, what you're doing, about your team, what you think is your competitive advantage in the marketplace, all of these things. And the great part about it is we're asking you to do it in 60 seconds. So that's really fun. It's a challenge and also an opportunity. You have this great 1-minute video at the end of this competition that you'll hopefully be able to use moving forward in your companies. So, just a little bit on the logistics. So, the final videos, I'm going to go over the timelines in a second. They do differ from medtech innovator companies and biotools innovator companies, but we are going to ask you to submit your videos via the portal. And we will then, our MTI BTI team will then post them on YouTube. And so, what your responsibility in this process is to share on YouTube, share on LinkedIn, because that's how the finalists are determined. So, this is, a large responsibility on your part from the company side to really get engagement and to get activity around the videos. So once they're posted, the be like a 2-week period of voting. And so share as much as you can online because that is part of what goes into selecting the finalists. So there's also a selection committee that plays into this, but a large part of it is how much you can get engagement on your 1-minute video. So that's kind of the process for submitting the videos. Jim, if you want to scoot me one more over, please. And so then, like, once the finalists are selected, if you're planning to attend AdvaMed conference for MedTech Innovator companies or the BTI Capstone event for BioTools Innovator companies, the final winner from each program will be determined at those events via a live audience vote. So basically, you play your video on a big, huge screen and you get people to vote based off of the video. And then that determines who's the winner of the $10,000 cash prize. So there's real money on the line beyond just like going through this exercise. So hopefully, you guys will have fun doing this and will also be an incentive to have a little cash prize at the end. Okay. So timelines, very important. So this slide is for the medtech innovator companies. So I'm going to say this probably a couple of times, but for the links and for the most accurate dates, please go to your Notion pages. Everything will be up to date here. This is just like kind of giving you an overview, but you'll be able to find the link of where to submit. You'll be able to find the deadlines. Everything will be listed. The guide will be listed on the Notion page. So everything you need related to this competition will be on your Notion page, but just generally your timeline. And so your videos for MedTech Innovator companies is going to be due on August 28th. So basically now until August 28th is the time that you have to produce your videos. Once they are all submitted, there'll be the voting period I talked about where you're going to share on YouTube and get everybody to like your video. That's going to be in early September for MedTech Innovator companies. And then the final competition where we pick the winner is going to be on October 7th, and that's where the live voting happens. And then that's where we're going to award the $10,000 for the MedTech Innovator companies. So, MedTech Innovator companies, your video is due August 28th. Okay, Jim, let's switch over and talk about the BioTools Innovator companies. So the BioTools Innovator companies, the event is later in the year, so you are lucky enough to get a little bit extra time. Not that much, really. Still want you guys to work really hard on getting these done. Your videos for BioTools Innovator will be due on September 18th. So submit on September 18th. Your voting period where you like and share on YouTube will be in early October. And then the final competition will be at the capstone event. That's happening on November 18th. And the winner will be awarded at that event. So MedTech Innovator Companies, your due date's August 28th. BioTools Innovator Companies, your video is due September 18th. If you have any questions, I'm sure your program managers would be happy to answer them. Okay, so I'm just going to kick off this conversation from the highest perspective of storytelling, some best practices recommendations that we have. So first and foremost, like always, lead with why. Most likely, 100% all of you are human beings. You have some reason for developing a product or technology that's beyond just like creating a tool. There's always some reason that has motivated you. There's some problem that you've dealt with that is relatable and resonates with people. And so for these videos, I really encourage you to lean into that and play to the emotional side. It's really going to help you with the connection piece of this process and really making it stand out for people who watch the video. So try to view this video with that lens and not I'm trying to explain what my product is. That will help you a lot in this process. Okay, Jim. So second is visualize your value proposition. So if you're like unsure about what piece of your company or your product to talk about in this video, it's really helpful to always go back to your value proposition and think about it from like what is your unique features, where do you fit in the marketplace, what is special about what you are doing, and so then you can take that with the understanding and really pick what pictures, what imagery, what types of visuals would fit that. So if you're ever in doubt about like, oh, where do I get started with this video? Good place to start is go back to your value proposition, back to the foundations and say, okay, like what is unique about my company, what product we're developing, and then kind of go from there and figure out what imagery, what pictures, what stories fit into that. So it's kind of reverse engineering. If you want to learn more about that, I will be talking about that in my breakout room. But moving on, so the next thing is very important. It's keep it tight, right? So there's only 60 seconds. You probably only have time to talk about one thing and really get that across clearly. You don't want to try to fit a bunch of messages, a bunch of different storylines in this. It's just 60 seconds. You probably just want to keep it really short and sweet to the point. So if you're looking for a place to start, start with the problem. You could give that about 15 seconds. Solution, 30 seconds. Call to action, 15 seconds. And that's it. That's the whole video. The experts on this call are definitely going to have more to say about that. But if you're looking for a general place to start, like just keep in mind those are some ideas of where you can get started on timing. And then the last one is showcase your brand and your personality. So this is, like we said, it's not a technical video. And what people are going to leave this video with is a feeling. And so we always say that in the brand marketing world. It's like brand is an emotion, it's a feeling that you get. It's not about the product. And so, try to view this video as opportunity to leave people with a feeling, whatever that might be. If it's funny, if it's really emotional, whatever you want that to be, this is your time to make that shine. So maybe view it from that lens might help you put a little bit more emotion or personality, make it a little bit more memorable on the back end, because that's what sticks with people. It's not the exact every single second of every word that you said. It's like this feeling that they're left with. So if you could just try to put it into that perspective and what you want people to feel at the end of it, that's probably a really good place to start. Okay, so that's all our general storytelling recommendations. So now I'm gonna pass it over to Jim. Jim is obviously the Associate Director with BioTools Innovator Program. I'm sure all the BioTools folks are really familiar with him, but he's also the winner of the very first cohort's Best Video competition. So he has a couple of guests today. He will introduce and they will go through some of their insights and perspectives on actually winning the competition. So I'm going to kick it over to you, Jim.
All right. Thank you, Sam. And great to see everybody. I don't know, this may be the biggest webinar we've had. There's a lot of people here. It's great. But because we have so many people and we're going to be doing the breakout rooms later, please take a moment to rename yourself. We want to see your name and then your company because there's too many of you and you're in different programs. So it'd be really helpful to have your name and your company in your title so that we can all know who you are. So with that,
This is Brian Mulcahy.
I'm sorry. We'll bring our guys up. So we got Brian Mulcahy. He is MTI's last year winner. And we're going to watch his video. And then we're also going to bring up Ricky Sparrow at Redbud Labs as we watch his video. So here we go. We'll do Brian's first.
This is Brian Mulcahy, co-founder of Oslo.
And my wife is a snorer.
Dang, so what did you do?
Well, two of my boss colleagues and I decided to start Oslo to build streaming, sensing sleep buds.
Sleep buds? What are those?
Sleep buds have a very specific function to help people sleep better comfortably.
We put together a team of engineers, audio, manufacturing, and creative experts, and launched on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, funding more than $7 million from excited backers. But we found we could do a lot more. To evaluate a potential therapy for a first clinical indication, Oslo has entered into a cooperative research and development agreement with Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. We're also excited to test a novel audio therapy with sleep buds to treat tinnitus. That's ringing in the ears. It impacts 50 million Americans, and more than 20 million find it bothersome. Today it has no cure, but we believe we can change that.
All right. There's Brian Mulcahy at Oslo.
You only get good data out of sequencing or PCR when you put a lot of good molecules in. Getting those molecules ready is called sample prep. Everybody hates sample prep. In today's world, doing sample prep by hand doesn't cut it. And the big automation platforms are built for high throughput. They just aren't practical for most labs. Labs need automated sample prep that's so simple, so reliable, so easy to use and maintain that they could put it anywhere. So we built Redbud NA1. We use patented technology to automate gold standard sample prep in a microfluidic cartridge. It's the same chemistry everyone knows and trusts, just easier and ready whenever you need it. Wherever there's life, there's molecular testing. And wherever there's molecular testing, there's sample prep. At Redbud, we love sample prep, so you don't have to.
All right. So let's go ahead and bring up here Ricky and Brian. Are you guys here? I can't see.
I can see you great.
All right, perfect. All right. Well, let's hop in. So, what's interesting here is we've got MedTech Innovator, where you got somebody solving a problem for a person. It's a great story and great potential about what you can do. The biotools companies, sometimes we have kind of a different challenge because it's not always quite as obvious what we're doing and what the impact of that is. But Ricky, I got you here first. Why don't you, if you have 1 minute to tell a story, what's the most important thing for you to communicate? What are you trying to get across with your video?
Yeah, so that's the question, right? In our process, that was the thing that we spent the whole time answering, going through the process. Um, I think for us, it was helpful to have started with who is our primary audience. So this, a video like this, in the conversation, you end up talking about a lot of audiences. Is it for investors? Is it for customers? Is it for partners? We decided early on we were more focused on strategic partners and customers than we were on equity investors. And so a lot of the stuff that you might put in an equity investor pitch, team, we never talk about that. We talk very little about IP, but we wanted people to understand, in our case, here's what we do. And because it's a mature market, we're coming in with a new product into a mature market. We wanted people to understand why we were different. And so we had to push aside a bunch of stuff, like there's one sentence on what's the problem, in order to make room for here's what we do and here's why it's different. That was for us, but I think it depends entirely on who you're trying to talk to and the specific industry you're in.
And what made you end up choosing the customer segment story that you ended up choosing as opposed to an investor or another group?
We were pretty close to moving into commercial stage. And so we wanted something that we would feel good about putting on the website for customers to see. And just the nature of our business and how we'd financed it up to that point made it a better fit, we thought, for strategic investors and strategic partnership than for equity investors.
Okay. And Brian, how about you? What were you thinking about in needing to communicate, and how'd you kind of think about your audience when you were putting your video together?
So to build on what Rick just said, as well as Sam, I mean, Sam suggested some specific times, 15 seconds for the problem, 30 seconds for the solution, and 15 seconds for the close. We shifted that a little bit because we were about a 2-year-old company. We had a couple of dozen employees, and we had a fair amount of traction already through crowdfunding. So we decided and this is some advice I had gotten as we, on this panel last year, was to focus on what makes you unique and to focus on what makes you as a company most proud. So we expanded on the problem solution call to action by also focusing on some of the great traction we'd already had. You saw in the video about our crowdfunding success. Matter of fact, some of those numbers are actually world records, which is kind of crazy for a startup, but that's why we focused on it. So that was one thing, is just to focus on what makes you, unique. And it was around the company, some of our capabilities, some of our early market traction. And then as far as the audience goes, we had 3 in mind. It was investors, it was consumers, because we were already marketing this product direct to consumer. And I'll talk about this in a breakout session later for those that are interested in D2C marketing. And also, to really help fuel the company's growth, we applied for a number of awards, industry awards, and we're lucky and blessed to have won a number of those. And this video, we hoped would be helpful for that. In fact, it was. It was one of the things that we included in our submission for some of these industry awards, because it tells the story in 60 seconds and somebody doesn't have to read, a multi-page application. So we tried to keep all those audiences in mind, and this is what makes this really challenging but exciting opportunity. You have 60 seconds, and there's so many things you want to accomplish and so many things you can say. But again, we tried to focus on what made us unique and different with a couple of different audiences.
So, Brian, I've seen and supported a number of Kickstarters over the years myself. Um, those are a pretty, I mean, my perception is those are a pretty substantial amount of work to put a Kickstarter together, including videos and demonstrators and things like that. I'm just curious from your perspective, did it prepare you? Was it significantly different? Did you reuse a lot of material? Like, how did the Kickstarter kind of impact your video here, or did it at all?
It helped a little bit. So I went back before this call just to refresh my memory. So of the 60 seconds that's on screen, 50 of the 60 seconds were completely new for this video. And 10 were a couple of clips that we pulled from the Kickstarter and Indiegogo video, but with a new voiceover. I think it's my voice that's speaking over that segment. And so it was really important, right, that this video, it has to tell a story. Sam talked about that as well. It can't be disjointed and kind of pulling a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and just kind of glomming it together. You got to put a lot of thought into that script so it's coherent and consistent all the way through. And if some of your previous assets can fold into that, great, but make sure that it flows. That's why most of it needed to be new, because of the challenge we had, because of the time limit we had, and because of some of the traction we'd had since the crowdfunding campaign.
Got it. Thank you. And just a quick aside, if you would like to ask some questions, I'll try to take some. But the chat gets a little messy, so there is a Q&A button. So it may be under more on your toolbar, but please try to submit through the Q&A for questions, and we'll try to watch those and get to them if we can. So Ricky, everybody has got a short period of time, no matter how long you have, whether you're BTI with a little more or MTI with a little less. You don't have enough time. You don't have a lot of time. So can you kind of talk to us about your process? When did you start preparing and kind of how long did you spend on the video in it last year?
Yeah, so I we spent a I spent a fair amount of time on it. One of my goals was to not make anyone else spend a lot of time on it. So I tried to keep it kind of siloed on my desk. Um, but the other thing that we did, ours was very much like a rapid prototyping process. So we actually shot that video either 3 or 4 times. But we didn't spend a huge amount to do it. Um, the and the final cut of that is actually a complete hodgepodge, kind of to your point, Brian. Like in our case, there's stock footage in there, there's me walking, there's like product photography stuff in there. And anyone who knows anything about video would go through this and take it apart and say, this is really janky from the kind of cinematography perspective. And some of it was stuff just shot on my phone that I got grabbing, through the lab. And some of it was on a high-end camera. But I started with the script. My theory was there's 60 seconds. You can't even fit that many words into 60 seconds. So the limited resource was words. And so I wanted to come up with a string of words that would fit into that time frame that got the content that I thought was the most important in the right order. I know a lot of people do the other thing where they like shoot a bunch and then they try and cut out the stuff that worked. For us, I'm not sure how we would have gotten to an end that way. So starting with the script, and then I actually shot the entire thing again just with my phone before I even went to the videographer we ended up working with. And that was what I used as the spec. I said, I want to do something like this. Can you help us make it look okay?
And that's one of the questions that came in is, did you use an agency to help you with your video, or did you do it all? Does it sound like you maybe worked with you started it yourself, but then brought in an agency?
Yeah, we definitely. And actually the second to last cut was just like a confessional style. So it was me just standing there talking to the camera with the other stuff cut inside of it. And at the very end, we put that whole thing together and looked at it and said, this is okay, but it's a little bit like kind of turgid. Like there wasn't a lot to it. And how do we make it more interesting to watch? And so very quickly, it took about 90 minutes or something, barely more than 60. He came back in and shot the walking version of it.
Okay. How about you, Brian?
Yeah, a lot of what Ricky just said resonated pretty strongly with me. We took a pretty similar approach. So I was really on point for this. I was the one that wrote the first draft of the script. I wanted to keep this just off everyone else's plate because we're a startup. Everybody's got a lot of things to do. So I wrote most of that first script. I then, with the same, eye on the word count and, getting under 60 seconds because I knew it would run over. I then socialized that with a number of colleagues, family, friends, just kind of for resonance, right? Does this kind of hit the mark? I spent probably a couple of weeks. This wasn't full time, but it was a fair amount of time for me before we then brought in a videographer. And much like Ricky said, I then said, here, I want to do something like this. Here's the script. Of course, it changed a bit, but not dramatically. But then, I said, here's what I'm thinking we could use for the on-screen here and different images here. And a lot of it didn't exist, so we needed to film it. And then the videographer had a bunch of good ideas, expanded on it pretty dramatically as well. But it started with the script, and that's absolutely critical. And by the way, I started on, so we had MTI had a very similar seminar like this or webinar last year. I took a ton of notes and I literally started on it that afternoon. I hope you all find this similarly helpful and take a lot of notes because you don't have a lot of time. And I was pretty motivated by the deadline and got started right away. And I'm thankful that we did.
Thanks, Brian. It's funny, you guys had a different journey than me. I actually was trying to make a script and I knew I wanted good quality camera and lights, so I hired a videographer. And when they came in, I said, "Hey, let's do the script." And like, "Yeah, let's just shoot some stuff." And they came in for a whole day, and we filmed interviews, we filmed some B-roll, and we just filmed, and talk. And then at the end, they went back and crafted our story from that. And so it's a different way. It wasn't my choice. I was like, "Well, let's do a script," but they were like, "Nah, we'll do it this way." And it went through several revisions, but it also kind of worked out. So I think there's multiple ways to roam, but that's great. Can you talk to me, Brian, about the value of this video? Did you get what you hoped to get from it? What were sort of your personal goals, and how has sort of have you gotten value from the exposure or sort of post program with the video?
Yeah, huge value in a number of fronts. So one, we went into this, the MTI has all of the companies do this because it's a muscle that we all need to develop, right? We all need to get good at this because telling stories is part of fundraising. It's part of selling your product. It's part of getting FDA clearance or whatever your goals are. So, one was to build a muscle. And two, because it's a competition and we're all pretty motivated people on this call, we're like, let's win this thing, right? Because winning this thing could also, add some credibility to the company. So that wasn't primary, right? It was about, developing the asset. And then third, it was, I mentioned a few minutes earlier, we had multiple stakeholders, but we wanted to use this for fundraising. We wanted to use this for award applications, and we wanted to use this for our direct-to-consumer marketing. And we did all of that, right? We raised more money after this. We've raised about $30 million between crowdfunding and venture in our early seed round. We've won a ton of awards, which we're very proud of, and we've done a lot of direct-to-consumer marketing. Leverage some of the assets that we developed with this video and some of the skills and capabilities we developed with the video. So really valuable. I'm really glad we did it.
Thanks, Brian. How about you, Ricky?
Yeah, a little bit on the same meta point. Like for us, obviously, the video is useful. We have it on our website. It's been useful in giving people a quick intro to the company. I think for us, learning that we could make video that would be useful, effective, inexpensive, and that we could generate quickly, that was a really, that has been a really important lesson for us. Um, and um, and so, like Brian said about building the muscle, like we're now doing a fair amount of stuff on LinkedIn as part of our product marketing. We're putting together how-to videos that we share with our customers. One of the big selling points on our product is it's super easy to use. And one of the ways to prove that to people is to say, you train someone by having them watch this 2-minute video, which for a lab tool in a molecular diagnostics workflow or molecular workflow is a says a lot. And so realizing that we could quickly put these things together for new kinds of content and building that muscle, getting some confidence internally that we could find a voice, that we could have a way of doing this that people would relate to, that would communicate some of the brand messaging without having to build this big steamliner of kind of brand infrastructure around the company, that we could do it in a way that was scrappy, that would let us kind of get started and get the message about who we are and why we're different across all the different kinds of content, whether it's marketing or, customer support or anything in between. That's been really, really helpful.
Thanks, Ricky. So I'm happy to take any questions from the cohort. So does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask Brian or Ricky? Just speak up.
So Talia asks, sorry, I don't know why I said I would love to hear any video production comment recommendations.
So I can give kind of a category recommendation. My belief on this stuff is you really want people committed to their craft. Like you want people that want to produce really good content, but also really want to produce that good content with you. And for me, having someone who was local was really helpful. So I just sent out notes to a few of the companies in town where I know the leadership and said, hey, have you ever done anything like this? And there's one industrial designer in particular that we've done some work with. And I think he has good taste, and I think he, builds good teams. And when he said, we've worked with this guy and he's good, that's who we use. So I would act, what worked for us was to find someone local, literally down the road, that we could really build a relationship with.
And just to build on that, so we had hired a videographer contractor to film the original video for our Kickstarter campaign. This was about a year before this pitch video. And the guy that came very recommended through our network, and he did a phenomenal job with the Kickstarter video. So we had him do some more direct-to-consumer marketing with us. We eventually brought him on as an employee. Like we were doing so much video work and so much creative work that he became an employee. He was based in Utah, and much of the U.S. Base of my company is in Boston. So I did this all remote with him until we did the day of the shoot, where he flew to Boston, and we had, choreographed this pretty carefully. And the beginning of the video was TMI here. It filmed in my bedroom, low budget, right? Didn't have to go anywhere. And then we did some work in the office. We have a shared office space nearby. So you doesn't have to be local. It certainly would have been more convenient had he been, but we did all this over Zoom and all the prep work, and then the shoot was all one day together.
Thanks, Brian. And I think, it kind of the next question I have to build on that is, how many edits did you do? How many rounds did it take to get to the product you were satisfied with at the end that told the right story?
A few. I'd say that, working with a pro, I was blown away with the first draft. I was like, oh my God, like this just blew away my expectations, because this guy was really, really good. But there were a few things that we realized were missing. and he was already at like 65 seconds. And I'm like, oh, we need to add something about this. We need to add something about that. And he's like, oh my God, like, it's never going to fit. So the hard part was, getting down from, it's the last mile or the last couple of seconds. And that took us a couple of weeks because we did want to add some more information that was, I think, a good ad at the end. And he did a good job with it, but took a while.
How about you, Ricky?
Yeah, so I mentioned we did a few rounds of it. There were a couple interesting decision points. So actually, early on, we did this very rough cut, and I'm saying it was a rough cut, but I had a similar experience to you, Brian, where came back and was like, oh yeah, this probably works. Like if it was due tomorrow, I could send this in and I wouldn't be embarrassed. But I sent it around. I started socializing it. And Jim, I sent it to you. I don't know if you remember this. And your reaction to it was, oh, this is good. This joke at the beginning kind of lands and whatever. But there was a line at the end because we were focused on customers, something about how the product was going to be rolling out. And your reaction to it was, I don't know, this doesn't feel timeless. It feels like a product video for this product. And, in 5 years, are you really going to feel like this is a good description of your company? We changed, I think, half a sentence in the script to zoom out. It's where that line, "We love sample prep so you don't have to," came from, that kind of zoomed back out from the product and talked about the company. And then it hung together as a company video. That was one big moment. The other big one was we did what was essentially the final cut of this thing of me walking. And I started to socialize it, and I showed it to my wife, and she hated it. She's like, you can't do this. And so, of course, I had this moment of panic, and we kind of scrambled, and I had to send it out wider and say, like, where are we on this? Like, I just need a reality check. I'm too close to this. And we actually picked this cut over my wife's objections. She has great taste. She's almost always right. But this is one where just like everyone told me we should go, and I don't have a better idea. So let's go. And so sometimes the feedback is actually a decision to do it anyway because people you trust who know know the space are saying, no, like this gets the job done. Focus on the business problem you want to solve and ask yourself, does this create problems for you? And does it solve the problems that you want to solve? And if the answer to the first question is no, and the answer to the second question is yes, then you're probably helping more than you're hurting, and go.
And just to build on that real quick, Ricky. So I mentioned that we found, our first cut was a little bit over, but there were a few things were missing. Where we realized a few things were missing was when we started to socialize it with some more folks. Ricky just talked about, getting more feedback. We did the same thing. It was really valuable because I was so close to this. I was like, oh my God, like, of course, right? But just a few things just were obviously not there. So you get more feedback. Even this is beyond the original review of the script. Just socialize it with as many people as you possibly can in the time you have, because, perspective is good, but ultimately somebody, you are going to have to make that call and say, we're going with this, right? You don't have an infinite amount of time.
Yeah.
Or
Great. And I'll compound your advice. I did the same thing. I had 4 or 5 rounds of edits. I sent it to people. I got feedback. It was really helpful because you're too close to the product sometimes. Guillaume, I saw your hand up. Would you still like to ask a question?
Yeah, with pleasure. Thank you very much, Jim and Rick and Brian. Your videos are very, very impressive. The question I have is that I have a product which I cannot show because it's an enzyme. So I was considering motion design. What do you think about that? Have you ever seen something like that?
Yeah, so I'll just say I totally understand the challenge of trying to tell a story about something that you can't show in a visual medium. And so the question then is what do you want people to understand? If you're going to be creating visuals that aren't your product, you still need those visuals to help someone is going to walk away knowing something that they didn't know before, and you want to be in control of what that thing is that they walk away with. And so that kind of business question of what is the most important thing for them to walk away with. Again, I think that's going to be very specific to your business. But we've had the most success when we back into the visual from the business problem, not start with what visual can we create and then how do we use that.
Thank you very much.
And we have time for maybe one more. Galen Robertson.
Yeah. Hey, Ricky, good to see you. I thought that your video was awesome, and Brian's yours was awesome also. But I guess how would you break up? So we talked about how to break up the 60 seconds. How would you break up the time between now and the due date? Like, how much did you spend on like getting your story straight, doing the video, and then final editing, and or however you would break it up?
So you have the deadline is the 28th.
28th, August 28th. So we got
6 weeks.
Yeah.
So, I would start today or tonight or tomorrow, right? I wasn't joking about that. If you take my approach, and it's different than what others have done, but writing a script, I'd shoot for a draft of that script in a week, socialize that further and iterate on that, over maybe no later than week 2. And then start working with a videographer if you haven't already, but maybe start trying to find one if you don't have one first, but engage the videographer sort of at the end of week 2 with a plan to start filming and editing week 3 and 4, to give yourself the last week or 2 to get the feedback we just discussed and to iterate and to improve it. But don't start filming this thing 3 days before it's due, because you're inevitably going to run out of time. You're not going to have enough time for feedback. So yeah, I guess a couple weeks on the script, a couple weeks on the filming, and a couple weeks on the back end to improve it. But
I think
Okay.
one thing that I found when I'm doing something that I haven't done before, so I have to learn the process as I do it. Often there are things that like you kind of don't know what's going to happen in the back half of the project, or even 2 or 3 weeks into it. And so one of the strategies I've used is like, how much can I get done this week? Okay, I should do that this week. And then at the beginning of next week, so it's more of like a tickler on the to-do list, where it's like at the beginning of every week, how much can I get done this week? And some of that is stuff looking ahead. I've got to go find the person who's going to shoot the video. And some of it might be, I'm going to write the script and get this feedback. But it's kind of setting those week by week goals with the idea that if I take some action every week and kind of get as far as I can without, stopping the rest of my job, that's a good pace to keep. And then, the earlier stuff gets done, the more time you have to fix stuff that isn't quite right. So we had an extra week or so, which was why we were able to reshoot ours as this walking video. And that was just because that's how the turns landed, right?
right.
All right. Thanks, guys. So
Can I
that's
have one quick-
oh yeah, good, Brian.
Just one more quick 30 seconds is, because it hasn't been mentioned before. So these videos need to be non-confidential, right? And many of you are making, intend to go after FDA claims, file patents, all that good stuff. But whatever you disclose in this video, realize it's going to be up on YouTube. You can't protect it. So be careful about what you say and how you say it. Obviously, you want it to be as exciting and compelling as we discussed earlier, but it has to be non-confidential.
Good point. And I was gonna say, for me, it was funny. We're not videographers generally. Probably most of us in this room, it's not our primary thing. For me, there was a segment we realized we needed to add. We didn't record the first time, and so I had to go do an audio voiceover segment. And I was like, I'll just use my phone and I'll record the clip and send it to you. And I'm sure you've got audio tools you can like level it out and make it good. And they're like, nope. So I had to drive across town to do a 45-second recording in their microphone just to get that same consistency. But yeah. All right. Well, Brian, Ricky, thank you. I believe you guys can see, if you weren't before, you should be able to see the Q&A questions now. I would encourage you, if you got, we still got some time, you can maybe answer those with your own comments as we move forward. But now we're going to transition this back to Sam, and Sam's going to talk to the professionals about how to make real videos.
Thanks, Jim. Do you mind sharing your screen again? Thank you. All right. So we're gonna actually talk to some professionals now. So I'm super excited to have this conversation. I hope it answers some of your follow-on questions more on the logistics side and how to actually get this video done. So first, I think Max is first. So he's a videographer, and if you could advance to the next slide, Jim, I think we'll see a little video of his work.
Reconstruct team who are developing a technology to improve women's health. But one thing stands in the way of effectively promoting their work.
We are creating vascularized tissues for breast reconstruction.
Cut. You can't say P-R-E-A-S-T.
Why can't I say that?
Yeah, well, you see, this is going on social, and we found that posts that say P-R-E-A-S-T perform poorly. So maybe try female chest organ or mammary gland.
We really can't say breast?
Well, male breast is okay, but not female. B-R-E-A-S-T.
But hundreds of ads for erectile dysfunction are no problem?
Yeah, sorry. That's the algorithm for you. All right, let's go for another. This time with less B-R-E-A-S-T references. All right, roll sound, roll camera.
If we can't talk openly about women's health, we can't advance women's health. Connect with the VEAS now to become part of our Women's Health Catalyst.
Awesome. And so that's Max's video. He's obviously a great videographer. And so just to kick us off before we go into the panel, let's advance and see Neil's video. He's
In range animation, we turn complex health concepts into powerful stories.
Take eye check, which combines multiple vision tests and measurements into a single, quick experience. Most people with diabetes fear losing their vision. Storytelling illustrates this by showing grandfather's eyesight gradually fading. His stress reflects what people authentically feel when making eye appointments. By showing this tension, we make health solutions relatable.
A real person doesn't have a front row seat to the development of eye disease, so we demonstrate this with clear medical visuals that show the risk. A great video doesn't just inform, it inspires action.
With animation, we guide the viewer through a story that warns but also offers hope. When medical devices are depicted with precise detail, they feel real and tangible, enhancing trust.
Instead of just saying early detection works, we show the grandfather seeing clearly again, making the benefits of care real.
Would you like your MedTech innovation to stand out? We're offering 25% off videos for participants in the Best Video competition.
Let's create something unforgettable together.
Awesome. And I think just briefly, Neil has a QR code right there. If you guys want to snap that and save it for later, that's his discount code for you guys. But let's go ahead and get into the discussion. So Max and Neil, are you guys here with me?
Yes.
Can't see either of you. Great. So just to start off, because people might not be as familiar, can you give us both just a quick 20-second intro on who you are and what your expertise are? Max, go ahead first.
Yeah, so I am a multimedia producer at the Wyss Institute. I came from a film background, so before I moved to Boston, I worked on a bunch of reality TV shows as a camera operator and was, a trained filmmaker. And I basically work for the Wyss to sort of tell the scientific stories in an interesting way and promote the work that's going on at the Wyss.
Awesome. And then Neil? Oh, you're on mute, I think, Neil. Can't hear you. It's okay. While you're figuring out that, Neil, I'll circle back, give you a second. So Max, just to get us started, first question of the panel is, when you're gotten a project and you're starting to work on a new video, what is the normal process that you start with or approach? Like maybe let's include storyboarding in here. Like what's your normal initial setup when you're starting to work on a new video project? Sign the dotted line with the customer. What's your process?
Well, I basically want to figure out like, you know, how what is the viewer supposed to take away from this video and why should they care? It's shown YouTube has shown that like a viewer had within 15 to 30 seconds, will decide whether or not they're going to keep watching the video. So you really only have like 10, 15 seconds to capture their attention. So, I want to make sure that they're, figuring out what's the hook, you know, why should the audience care and what's the takeaway? And there's an old saying in the film world where you can make a bad movie with a good script, but you can't make a good movie with a bad script. So spending the necessary time on the screenplay is incredibly important. I know that there's only 6 weeks to produce this video, but that should not be an excuse to sort of rush through the writing process. It's a lot easier to make edits to a Word document than it is to sit down with finished footage and try to make it work. Then that's going to cost you more money. So definitely spend the necessary time there and getting all the feedback that you need on the writing process.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, Neil, why don't you go
Okay,
ahead and introduce
excellent.
yourself?
All right, thank you. My name is Neil Israel, and I co-founded and the CEO of Range Animation. And we are health focused, and part of the reason for that is that I've actually had type 1 diabetes since 1979. So I have very real lived experience of the need to for health innovations, and the understanding that people need to understand how those innovations work. My wife and I are the heads of the company, and we just reach out to health companies and try to tell their stories. Well, I would totally agree, first of all, with what Max just said, that it's an absolute process, and what needs to happen is get the kinks work out in the beginning, and first of all, don't change the story after a certain point, because everybody's got that inclination to say, wait, I could do this, and and I can't tell you how many times I've had that hand in head moment where like somebody's got like 50 changes and it's like 3 days after the date. But really sticking with the story and getting the story down and then adding the images, that's our process, and it's the right process. Adding images and then animation. So, and essentially just what Max said, get the script right and then do the video for production.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I completely agree with you guys. Like if from I can't tell you working with enough clients, like just emphasize getting that strategy, figuring things out on the front end will save you so much time, and also stress, I feel like is a big part. Like people get really upset when it doesn't turn out the way that it does. And so I think spending the time up front is really helpful, figuring out what you want that vision to be. Because without that vision and that like idea for what you want it to fully be, it's just you're gonna have those inevitable changes on the back end. So completely agree with you guys. Okay, so we have videographer and animation here. So just from your own perspective, I'm curious, like learning a little bit more about this competition and what we need in this 1 minute video. What are the key components of an effective storyboard? Like I spoke a little bit about, some of the pieces that I might break out, but I'm curious from both of your perspectives and your experience, what do you see? How do you see the 60 seconds breaking out into a video that these companies have to do? Max, go ahead.
So I came from the film world where a storyboard's actually like a comic book drawn out version of the screenplay. So is that sort of what you were referring to, or?
Yeah, just like how would you break that up? I think, using the storyboard as a tool maybe, like how would you segment that and decide on, which pieces go where?
Yeah, so usually the storyboard for me comes really towards the end of the writing process once you sort of have a filmmaker, involved in the project and you sort of want to see like how the written page is going to translate to the actual final video. So you unless if you're artistically inclined or you can hire a storyboard artist on Fiverr, draw out pretty much every edit of the video and you sort of need a shot list in order to do that, and maybe some locations in mind as well. So for previous videos, sometimes where there's, complex graphics, like in the case of, the Oslo video where you have actual text showing up in the middle of the shot, a storyboard is very helpful because it, helps you, make sure you're planning the shots, leaving room for these texts as well as graphics that might come in. And, some people are not able to visualize, a video from reading the script alone. So having a storyboard drawn out definitely helps, communicate to all the different people involved, like what this final video is going to look like.
Awesome.
I would 100% agree with that. I mean, we can't, our whole process after an initial discovery is based around using a storyboard iteratively with our clients to build this video. We start with the script, which comes from the ideas that are generated in a discovery session, and then we add the images. So, and we're getting feedback as we go, adding images and then adding the final animation. So it flows naturally, but the storyboard is 100% a requirement. I would say that kind of in terms of what's necessary for a 1 minute video, to me, character-driven stories are very effective. And there's a lot of data to back that up. And I would suggest I would mention just one real quick study that said out of Penn that they basically compared what motivates people to donate. A story about one girl raised at 10x versus data about a girl, I'm sorry, a girl in a country that was having disasters. Her story did 10 times better than a story of just data about that. So, I mean, it tells you that when compared between a story that engages people, a story that excites people, you can do that. And one thing that is important to say, sorry, I just kind of bumped up the story, but I think it's really important to know that a character doesn't have to be a character-driven story doesn't have to be a person, whether it's drawn or a human being. It can be if you're doing an explainer, it can be the product itself, and there's various ways to do that creatively.
And just to build upon what Neil said, I mean, I've been to a lot of, talks from, business development professionals that were talking to different research teams here, talking about how they would formulate their pitches, which could ultimately turn into videos. And the biggest advice that stuck with me was they said that, venture capitalists, they don't fund, technologies, they fund the team that is going to bring that technology to market. So I feel like when you're creating a video about, a technology and the team really, the personality of the team really needs to come through in the video.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, at this stage for many of our companies, like the team is the person at the brand, and so you can't go wrong with pulling on that lever. I completely agree with you. I just have a couple more questions for you guys. So this one's for you, Max. Like you really specialize in translating the science into video. And so how can you help these startups or anybody at the stage figuring out what that core message is and how that translates into video without like losing the complexity of the science that they're doing?
Well, just sort of flipping that question on its head, the big question that I often have is, does the complex science need to be in the video? For the impact, I like to focus on the impact. What problem is this technology going to solve? And I think you'll quickly find that you can get away with not saying a whole lot about, the complex science if you focus entirely on the impact and the problem and the solution that it's bringing forth.
Totally agree. What I was thinking about was begin with the end in mind, because it doesn't matter how technical you are. If you're human, you will be impacted by a story that engages you and touches you emotionally. And I would totally agree. Going too far into the detail isn't really necessary.
What tips would you offer the teams here who are starting to work on their stories, maybe before they get to you guys, on figuring out how to translate these technical concepts, like how and get to that meat of what do they want to articulate? Do you guys have any tips for how far they should get before they like reach out to an agency or either one of you? Like, where should they come to you guys with?
Yeah. Max, do you want to go?
Yeah, I would say, definitely need to have your elevator pitch, together, because that's ultimately what you're going to be telling me when talk in the initial talks about your project. So, and having like a really good elevator pitch is going to help you write a very good script for this video. This is sort of like a piece of advice for further along in the process, but don't discount the importance of good audio. I think that a lot of people, they focus so much on the visuals and everything, and don't forget about like the audio in terms of like the quality of the audio that you're recording on set, the sound effects that you're using, the music. We really think critically about that. And I think we've seen, in like found footage movies like the Blair Witch Project, the Paranormal Activity, it's like a home video, but the audio is pristine. And there's no quicker way to give away that you're working with like a low production value project than bad audio.
Neil?
I would say, I first of all 100% agree, and have had to, create and recreate because of audio in the past. I think for the message to the founders is, why are you innovating? What problem are you trying to fix? And how can you show that in a what are some ideas for seeing that problem? Because I think that is what's going to get you to the really the question that we were talking about before, in terms of touching people at an emotional level, and yet still being able to show what your product does in a way that is, and one great thing about video is that you can cut it. So you can make this version for investors, and then this version for customers. And I think you may not want to sell a product per se to investors, but you're still showing them why people will want to buy the product.